let's be honest, the ancient book of Leviticus, with all its rituals and sacrifices, it can feel a little distant, right? A bit irrelevant? But what if I told you that entire, incredibly detailed system was built around a massive, deliberate hole? A flaw that wasn't a mistake at all, but was actually designed to teach us something absolutely vital about who we are and to point us toward a solution we couldn't live without.
So let's just jump right into the big paradox for this whole explainer. What if a system of forgiveness, one handed down by God himself, was actually intentionally designed to fail? I know it sounds crazy, but stick with me because that's the exact question we're going to dig into. Okay, now, before we even get to the failure part, we have to get one thing straight. This system was, first and foremost, an incredible gift of grace. It was never meant to be a trap. A great way to think about it is like a staircase of worship, a really clear, tangible path that God gave his people to get back to him, to stay connected, even with all the messiness of daily life.
And it was so practical. I mean, look at this. It had this comforting clarity. You had a guilt offering if you'd wronged someone and needed to make it right. A sin offering if you accidentally made a sacred space unclean. You even had peace offerings just to celebrate being with God, or a burnt offering to show you were all in. For pretty much any minor accidental problem, there was a specific, tangible fix. It was a way to clean up the everyday stains of life.
The whole system was really built around this one key Hebrew concept, bišgagah. And it basically means unintentional sins. You know, the mistakes, the accidents, the stuff you do because you just didn't know any better. This is what the system was amazing at, cleaning up the messes we didn't mean to make. But that one word, unintentional, that's the key that's going to unlock the system's biggest secret.
Because for a completely different kind of sin, the system offered absolutely nothing. Not a single animal, no ritual. The priest couldn't help you. When it came to deliberate, open-eyed rebellion, this incredibly detailed system just goes silent. A deafening silence. It was a deliberate and, frankly, a terrifying void.
And that category of sin is defined by this Hebrew phrase, Beyad Ramah. It literally means sinning with a high hand. See, this isn't a mistake. This is conscious. It's premeditated rebellion. It's the spiritual equivalent of looking God right in the face and saying, I know exactly what you want, and I'm choosing to do the opposite.
This really lays out the difference perfectly. Okay, so unintentional sin, that bišgagah, that's like tracking mud into the house. Annoying, sure, but the system gives you a mop and a bucket to clean it right up. But deliberate, high-handed sin, that's not tracking mud in the house. That's lighting a match and setting the house on fire. The system could handle the stains, but it was totally, completely powerless against that kind of intentional destruction. And the consequence? Wow, it was just as intense. The text says that this person insults the Lord and was to be cut off from his people. Now, this isn't just a timeout. This means you were severed, cut off from your community, from the promises of God, from his presence. It was a spiritual dead end, and there was no prescribed U-turn.
So what happens when this kind of sin, this house-burning sin, is committed not by some random person, but by the king, the one person who's supposed to be the model for everyone else? Well, that brings us to our ultimate test case, King David. His story is so much more than a moral tale. It's a stress test that pushes this entire system to its absolute breaking point. This is the story of the king who set the house on fire. I mean, just look at this tragic sequence of events. This wasn't one mistake, it was a chain reaction. David coveted his neighbor's wife. He committed adultery with her. Then he engaged in this web of deception, and finally he meticulously arranged for the murder of an innocent man. Every single step was deliberate. It was premeditated. It was a conscious violation of God's law. This is the absolute textbook definition of sinning with a high hand. And when the prophet Nathan confronts him, he confirms it. He doesn't say, David, you made a mistake. No. He says, you have despised the word of the Lord. That word, despised, is everything. It's the language of high-handed sin. It's the exact kind of rebellion that gets you cut off from God and his people. And what's so wild is that David, when he's judging the man in Nathan's story, he completely condemns himself without even realizing it. He gives two verdicts. First, he says the man owes fourfold restitution. Okay, that's a civil penalty for theft. It's completely useless for adultery and murder. But then, he says the man deserves to die. And that's the spiritual consequence. David himself knew his actions had kicked him outside the system, into that terrifying place
where no sacrifice could possibly help him. So, with the door to the altar basically slammed in his face, what could David possibly do? He can't bring a bull or a lamb. He can't perform some ritual. He is left with only one possible path forward, a raw, desperate, direct cry to God that goes way beyond anything the established system had to offer.
And you could just hear his shattered realization in the words of Psalm 51. He cries out, "For you will not delight in sacrifice, or I would give it. You will not be pleased with a burnt offering." He gets it. He completely understands. The system has absolutely no answer for what he did. He's in the abyss, and the staircase back to God is gone.
But then comes the breakthrough. If he can't offer an animal from his flock, what can he offer? The only thing he has left, the only thing that's truly his own brokenness. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. That was it. That was his only hope. An offering not of an animal, but of his complete, utter, desperate surrender.
And his request isn't just for a patch-up job. He asks God to create in me a clean heart. And the Hebrew word he uses there is bara. Now get this. That is the exact same powerful verb used in Genesis 1 when God creates the entire universe out of absolutely nothing. David knew he didn't just need forgiveness. He needed a miracle. He needed a total recreation from the inside out.
And this brings us right back to our main point, the system's huge limitation, its apparent flaw. It wasn't a bug. It was a feature. It was intentionally designed this way to teach us a guide that would point all of us toward a much, much deeper truth about ourselves.
So why? Why build a whole system of forgiveness with this massive hole in it? Well, its purpose was to show us what the real problem was. See, the issue wasn't just our external mistakes, it was the internal rebellion in our hearts. This deliberate gap was meant to create a deep, desperate longing for something better. It was meant to show us that this whole sacrificial system was just temporary scaffolding, a shadow pointing forward to something real that was on its way. And this is where the whole story has been heading. That giant void in the old system, it wasn't just an empty space. No, it was a space that was shaped perfectly for a future promise. It was like a giant arrow pointing directly toward a new and a much better covenant.
And this contrast between the shadow and the reality is everything. The old system was amazing at exposing the wound of sin. It could shine a giant spotlight on it, but it was powerless to actually heal it. It could show you that you had a rebellious heart, but it couldn't change it. It was a law written on stone tablets. But the promised solution, the reality, it wouldn't just expose the wound, it would heal it. It would create a brand new heart and write the law directly on it.
And this isn't something people figured out later. The prophet Jeremiah was talking about this exact solution centuries before. He promised a new covenant where God wouldn't just give us external rules to follow, but would fundamentally change his people from the inside out, the very miracle David was crying out for in that psalm. So, here's the big takeaway. The ancient Levitical system, in its brilliant design, teaches us that our deepest problem isn't the mistakes we make, it's the state of our hearts. The whole system was designed to fail at fixing that core issue, precisely to make us look for something, or someone, who actually could. Which leaves us with one final, massive question to chew on. If the system was designed to prove that our ultimate problem isn't what we do, but who we are on the inside, our hearts, then what kind of solution could ever possibly be powerful enough to fix that?